It is the summer of 216 BC, and the Roman Republic is bleeding. After suffering a string of humiliating defeats on their own soil, at Trebia and Lake Trasimene, Rome faces an existential crisis. An invader is marching through Italy, tearing through their legions. Desperate to end the nightmare, the Roman Senate abandons their cautious strategy of delay. They decide to solve the problem with overwhelming mass, assembling a massive army of 8 legions. At 86,000 men, it is the largest military force the Republic has ever put into the field. Waiting for them in the plains of Apulia is that invader, Hannibal Barca. But his Carthaginian army numbers only 50,000. He is outnumbered nearly 2-to-1 by the advancing Romans. This extreme numerical mismatch creates a brutal collision of military philosophies. Rome relies on the unstoppable momentum of a human battering ram. Hannibal, to survive, needs a tactical miracle. The Roman machine is a heavily armed citizen militia, but it has a fatal flaw in its leadership, a divided command. The army is led by 2 consuls who alternate control every single day. One is the cautious Aemilius Paullus. The other is the aggressive, glory-hungry Varro. On Varro's day of command, the Romans advance. They march in rigid, uniform formations, equipped with heavy bronze helmets, large body shields, thrusting spears, and armor designed for a brutal, grinding melee. Across the field, Hannibal commands a diverse patchwork of mercenaries. He fields lightly armored Gauls and Iberians carrying long, slashing swords, alongside highly disciplined Libyan infantry. They share no common nationality, but they are fiercely loyal to their general. But Hannibal begins fighting before the first sword is drawn. The day prior, he sends light cavalry to relentlessly harass the Roman watering parties. Under the sweltering August sun, the massive Roman camp is subjected to severe thirst and sleep deprivation. Then, Hannibal deliberately positions his army with their backs to a strong southerly wind. As the immense Roman formation marches forward, the wind kicks up thick clouds of dry sand and dust, blowing directly into their eyes. By weaponizing the terrain and the weather, Hannibal exhausts and blinds the Romans. He turns their famous rigid discipline against them, wearing down the massive force before the 2 armies even make contact. Varro compacts his infantry into a deep rectangular block to punch through the center. Hannibal answers by arching his Celtic and Iberian center forward into a bulging crescent. The lethal threat is hidden. Veteran Libyan infantry stand in deep columns on the far edges. The engagement opens on the wings of the battlefield. Hannibal's heavy Iberian cavalry on the left and his swift Numidian horsemen on the right charge directly into the Roman cavalry protecting the flanks. On the right flank, 500 Numidians throw their weapons to the ground, faking a surrender. The Romans push them back, where the Numidians draw hidden swords and violently hack from behind. Caught completely off guard, the Roman cavalry breaks and flees. Without their mounted units, the Roman battering ram is stripped of its flank protection. In the center, the deafening crush of the infantry begins. The massive Roman block slams violently into the bulging front of the Carthaginian crescent. Hannibal orders a controlled retreat. The crescent inverts, bending into a U-shape. The Romans crowd inside, compacting into a wedge. The trap snaps shut. Libyan infantry pivot inward, striking the exposed sides. Simultaneously, Carthaginian cavalry returns, smashing into the Roman rear. The Romans are entirely surrounded. Pushed inward from the front, sides, and rear, the physical compression becomes so extreme that the legionaries are packed shoulder to shoulder. They don't even have the physical space to draw their swords, lift their heavy shields, or defend themselves. What follows is an industrial-scale massacre. Over 70,000 Romans are systematically slaughtered. At the peak of the fighting, 600 men are killed every minute until darkness finally stops the bloodletting. Hannibal has just executed a perfect double envelopment. He took Rome's greatest strength, their overwhelming numerical superiority and aggressive forward momentum, and used it as the mechanism to compress and destroy them. When the news reaches Rome, the city descends into absolute panic. The government completely breaks down, and the terror is so profound that the Romans resort to burying people alive in the city center as a human sacrifice to appease the gods. Across the sea in Carthage, Hannibal's brother demonstrates the sheer scale of the slaughter. He walks onto the Senate floor and pours out a massive bucket of gold rings, each one stripped from an elite Roman knight. The geopolitical fallout is immediate. The long-standing illusion of Roman invincibility shatters. Crucial Italian city-states like Capua, watching the Republic hemorrhage its fighting-age population, revoke their treaties and defect to Hannibal. The disaster was a systemic shock that threatened to erase the Roman Republic from history. Yet, the Romans refuse to surrender. They ban public mourning, lower the draft age, and enlist slaves for new legions. And crucially, they realize their traditional, rigid block formation is obsolete. The trauma of Cannae forces a radical military evolution. The Romans eventually discard the clunky, deep block manipular system, breaking their massive lines down into smaller, highly agile, independent cohorts that flex and adapt on the battlefield. They abandon the deadly practice of alternating daily generals, shifting toward permanent, unified commands. The part-time citizen militia dies, replaced by the lethal professional military machine that will go on to conquer the Mediterranean. The logic of Hannibal's trap survived the fall of Rome. For 2 millennia, commanders have used Cannae as the primary template for a battle of total annihilation. This strategy obsessed modern generals, heavily influencing military theorists like the chief of the German general staff, Alfred von Schlieffen. This map shows the Schlieffen Plan. It shows an attempt to map Hannibal's double envelopment maneuver onto the geography of 20th century Europe. And the tactics remain relevant in the modern era. During the 1991 Gulf War, General Norman Schwarzkopf directly cited Hannibal's triumph at Cannae as the inspiration for his rapid, enveloping coalition operations. The slaughter at Cannae failed to destroy Rome. Instead, the tactical trauma forced the Republic to modernize, forging the military machine that would conquer the Mediterranean and defining the objectives of Western warfare for centuries.